Hey everyone, Mr. Voikin here, and we're going to take a look at a couple triangles here. Remember I gave you this website right here. It's in Google Classroom. So basically you can make your own questions up using this. So right now we've learned that we can label the triangle with 3 uppercase letters for the angles. We have a 190-degree angle in each one of those corners. And if we look at the triangle in the website here to the right, we can see that the bottom left here they've labeled as A. Now it doesn't really matter what that is labeled, but in this case it's labeled A. Up top they've labeled it B, and the 90-degree corner they've labeled C. Now remember that we will be using SOHCAHTOA. And the way SOHCAHTOA works is sine of an unknown angle equals O, which is opposite, over hypotenuse. Cosine of an unknown angle equals A, which is adjacent, over hypotenuse. And tan of an unknown angle equals O, which is opposite, over A, adjacent. So those 3 formulas are going to be used to calculate all the angles in the triangle. And then to calculate the sides, we will be using c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So if I only have 2 sides and no other angles, I need to use this formula right here, Pythagoreans Theorem. If I have 2 sides and no angles, I can use any one of these formulas to calculate that angle. And if I have an angle and 1 side, then again I can use any one of these formulas up here to also calculate the other side. So with the website that we have here, remember, so far all we have done is taken a look at triangles that are given 2 different sides. So on this triangle, directly across, which would be opposite of the 90-degree angle, which is labeled as C, would be side C, and that's labeled with a lowercase c. And directly across, or opposite of that B angle, would be the B side with a lowercase b. And directly across from A, the opposite of A, would be side A, which would be labeled with a lowercase a. And remember that C is always going to be the hypotenuse. I'm just going to label the other triangle right here. Okay, now all you have to do is give yourself just any random 2 numbers. Just remember that C has to be the longest side. So this one has to be the longest at all times. So let's start off with doing this triangle on the right, and we will say that you're given sides A and B. So you're given the 2 shorter sides. So let's just choose any 2 random numbers. So I'll choose 10.4 for A and 18.6 for B. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is calculate out side C. So in order to do that, we are going to use c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Now, once we manipulate this formula, we're trying to basically solve for c, not c squared. So what I need to do is square both sides of the equation. And when we are squaring something that is squared, it basically just, those 2 cancel out. So what we end up with is c equals a squared plus b squared, and we want to take the square root of that. So all we need to do now is just put those numbers that are on the triangle into the proper locations. So you can see that A is 10.4, so this becomes 10.4 squared. And we're going to add to that whatever B is, which is 18.6, and square that. And then it's just a matter of punching that into the calculator. So take the square root of 10.4 squared plus 18.6 squared. Sorry. And we end up with 21.31009151. And right now we're not using significant digits. We're just going to say round it to one decimal place. So we will round it to that point. So there should be one decimal point. So I look past that. If that is a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, this stays as a 3. If it's a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, it would move up to a 4. So in this case, it is a 1, so it will stay as 21.3. So that means that this side right here becomes 21.3. Now, like I told you in class, I would not use that one in any of my calculations just in case I made a mistake, because I was given 18.6 and given 10.4. I know for sure that it is a valid number. Okay, now let's take a look at solving one of the angles. And it doesn't matter which angle you solve. Okay, so I will solve angle A. So this is going to be theta right now. Angle A is the same thing as theta. It is unknown. So now what am I going to use? I need to use SOHCAHTOA. One of those formulas is going to work here. So I just need to figure out what are these sides in relation to that angle. So it's either going to be an opposite or an adjacent or a hypotenuse. Now remember what we said, that the C is always going to be the hypotenuse. So we are not going to use that formula in this case because remember we calculated that 21.3, and I said just in case you got it wrong, don't use that one. So if we're not using that, that means, well, I'm not going to use SO because it's got an H in it. And I'm not going to use KA because it has an H in it. So I will be using TOA, so tan. Now, which one of these is opposite and which one of these is the adjacent? Well, remember what we said? Opposite is the one with the same letter. The one that's directly across, that is the opposite. So this becomes my O, and this becomes my A. So now I just need to go back to this formula, which is tan of the unknown angle, remember we wrote that up here, equals opposite over adjacent. Okay, now we're going to substitute, so tan of the unknown angle equals opposite, which is 10.4, over the adjacent, which is 18.6, and we just have a ratio of those two sides. Now whenever we get a setup like this where it says tan of an unknown angle equals that ratio, what we're going to do is convert that to the unknown angle equals the inverse tan of that ratio. And if you have a good calculator, you should be able to just punch this into calculator as second function tan, which brings up the inverse tan with the little exponent at -1 right there. My calculator opens a bracket for me. I'm going to type 10.4 and I'm going to say divided by 18.6. Now the calculator also has a fraction function on it, so you could actually insert a fraction into this position and input those two numbers in that fraction. It'll work both ways, just make sure that you have a bracket around it. Okay, now just hit enter, and it says that we have an angle. So theta, which is angle A, is equal to 29.211292226, etc. And if we are going to be rounding that number to one decimal place, that will be 29.2. So now I know that this angle A is 29.2, and don't forget to put degrees. Now we have one more angle left to calculate, and that would be this unknown angle, which is B. Now how do we calculate angle B? Well, angle B, I'm running out of space here, but I'll just go to a different color. And angle B is going to equal 180 degrees minus the two other angles, which is 90. Well, we're always going to have 90. So there's no point going 180 minus 90 every time. We just know angle B is going to be 90 minus the 18 or 29.2. Okay, now most of us can do this calculation in our head, but remember, if we're on a test, we want to double confirm that it's correct. So use your calculator to confirm that you're doing the calculation correctly. It takes just a second to punch it in, and we get 60.8. So that means this angle B equals 60.8. And if you want to even double check, I can just go 60.8 plus 29.2, and that should equal 90 degrees. Okay, and there we go. We can finish labeling this triangle with a 60.8. And there we go. We have solved the entire triangle. Don't forget that's degrees, and this one down here would be 90 degrees. Okay, now I'll do one more triangle on the other one. I'll have to copy that down to a new page. Oh, sorry, but anyways, the reason we have the website open here to the right is our two numbers that we put in there originally. We want to confirm our answer. So I'm just going to put 10.4 in there in position A, and B was 18.6. And now I just hit calculate. It says side C is 21.3, check. Angle A is 29.2, check. And angle B is 60.788, which would round to 60.8, check. Good job, team. All right, so let me just copy this one. And copy. We'll head down to a new page. And we'll paste that one in there. Okay, so we basically start off with the triangle labeled like that, knowing that C is always the hypotenuse. Now remember what I said, that we don't know what these angles are going to be labeled as. So this could be L, M, and N. And if that's the case, across from big L would be little l, across from big N would be little n, and across from big M would be little m. So they're just a way of formatting and labeling the triangle. Okay, but I'm using ABC in this case because the website that we're using also uses ABC. So I'll hit reset over here, and now I'm just going to use my brain to come up with two other random numbers, and I'll put them in position C for sure. Use C and either A or B. It doesn't matter which one you choose. Okay, remembering that C has to be the longest of the numbers. So I'll just choose 109.8 for C, and I'll label B as 82.1. Okay, so what does that mean? I need to calculate. Well, I need to calculate this A. I already know C. The angle is 90. I know I need to calculate angle B and angle A. Okay, so we're going to start off with Pythagoreans Theorem again. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. And in this case, we're trying to solve for A. And it doesn't matter if it's A or B, which is right there. So this is just basic algebra where I need to manipulate this formula so that this is saying A equals something. So I need to isolate that A on one side of this equal sign, and everything else needs to be on the other side of that equal sign. So let's deal with this B squared first. So it's a positive B squared, and if I have one of them, to get rid of them, I'm going to subtract that B squared. And remember that whatever I do to one side, if I subtract B squared here, I have to do it to the other side. So on the right side of this equal sign, we got B squared minus B squared, which basically is nothing. I got nothing left there. But we still have our A squared there. Now what's on the other side of the equal sign? Well, I could write it as negative B squared plus C squared, but we don't. We usually write it as C squared minus B squared. Okay, now we're looking very similar to what we had right here. Okay, and what did we have to do? We had to get rid of that squared, so we took the square root of both sides. So all I need to do is say A equals the square root of C squared minus B squared. Okay, now this is something you should be able to remember, and when you come into a test, you should be able to understand how we went from that point to that point. But if you can remember this and skip all this work right here, then you're saving yourself time. Okay, and if you can get to this point, you should understand how you got there. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is just replace those variables with the values that are given on the triangle. So I have A equals the square root of what is C, 109.8 squared, minus B, which is 82.1 squared, and then go to my trusty calculator and punch it in. So we'll take the square root. You know what I'm going to do? I've got an online calculator here, so I'll just pop that up right now. Punch that in there for you so you can actually see it. So I'm just hitting second and squared, which brings up the squared root symbol, and now it's asking me to input something, and I would just type 109.8 and hit squared. And don't forget, on many of the calculators, you gotta be careful that it's not up top here. Like sometimes that can be up top and you end up going minus up here. So we don't want to be in the exponent. Okay, so if I was to clear this and do that again, second square root, and if I put in 109.8, and if I use this little hat symbol here to put the squared in, now I'm up there. So if I hit minus, it sort of messes things up. So I'll delete that, and I just have to hit the arrow over to bring me back down. Now I'm going to minus 82.1 squared. Okay, and it gives us a value of 72.908, and we're going to round that to 72.9. Okay, now this is going to become 72.9, but again, it's going to be a value that I'm not going to use in any of my calculations because I may have made a mistake. Also, when you're doing your calculations, you should always go back and double check that you input that value correctly. So 109.8 squared, 109.8 squared, minus 82.1 squared, 82.1 squared. It's all good. Okay, now on the last one, we decided, hey, let's start off with angle A, and I told you it didn't really matter. So let's prove that by starting off with angle B. So remember, that is going to be an unknown angle. We'll call theta. And now I just have to remember SOH CAH. And what am I going to be solving? Well, I got to figure out what the other sides are. So remember, looking directly across and having the same letter but just lowercase is going to be our opposite. So this side is my opposite, which means if that one is my hypotenuse, it only leaves me with one option, that A is going to be my adjacent. So which one did I say we can't use? We're not going to be using that one because we calculated that one and we may have made a mistake. So we're not going to be using an A. So I'm not going to use toa. I'm not going to use ka. I will be using so. All right, so let's just write this formula out. Sine of the unknown angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. Now writing it down, it makes you think, and the visuals also minimize mistakes. So I'm going to go sine of an unknown angle equals opposite. So I'm looking at that O, and I now go find, so I'm looking at that O, I go find that O, and I get that number, and I make sure it ends up right there. Well, in this case, right here. Okay, so that is 82.1 over H. Where's my H? It's up here, 109.8. So over 10, oops, go back to my pen, 109.8. Okay, now that we're at this point, we're essentially doing the same thing that we did right here, where we're going to say the angle equals the inverse operation of that ratio. So let's do this. We're going to say theta equals the inverse of sine, don't forget the brackets, 82.1 over 109.8. Okay, a good calculator will automatically put the brackets there for you, but some of the lower end calculators, you'll need to put those brackets in for yourself. So let's punch this into the calculator. I'll use the one on the screen. Okay, so which one are we looking for? Sine, that's right here. Now remember, what we're looking for is the inverse, this little green one up above. So that means I'm going to press the green button, press this one that, oops, well, let's go right, clear that out of there first. So go grab the inverse sine, and there you can see it puts a bracket in there for me. Okay, now I just need to punch in the 82.1 divided by 109.8. So it's 82.1 divided by 109.8. Okay, and it gives us that angle is 48.39. So this one will round up to 48.4. And I know you guys know how to round, because every time you get a test score back, you're always hoping that we round it up. But you need to use the rules of rounding. So this one is 48.4. Now remember what I said, to calculate angle A, I could, use one of the SOHCAHTOA functions, but, why am I going to do that if I can do it very simply by going angle A equals 90 minus 48.4. So again, I can do that in my head, but I'm just going to punch it in to make sure. 90 minus 48.4, hit enter, and I get 41.6. So angle A equals 41.6. This becomes 41.6. And again, don't forget to put the degrees symbols there, and this one is 90 degrees. And there we go, that triangle is solved. This has a fraction function on it too. I can't remember how to do it. I think you might go to math. Can't remember how to do it on this one, but I have another one right here. And with this one we can, not narrow. This one the fraction function is right here. So if I was going to punch this into there on this calculator, I would be looking for sine. It's green, so use the green button, sine. This one gives me an opening and closing bracket, and I can just say, put a fraction in there. And on the top is 82.1. And to get to the bottom, I just have to hit this down arrow and punch in 109.8. And again, it gives us the same answer. This one has more decimal places than this one right here. And the main reason is on this one, I think I went to mode and I'm set. Where am I set to here? No, maybe it's not mode. I think it is mode. Okay, definitely while I'm in here, make sure, this is quite often unfortunate for a student, is they'll be in radians when they're doing the calculations, and or gradians, and all your answers are going to be wrong. We need to do these calculations using degrees. And if you look on my calculator right here, it says DEG. So somewhere on your calculator, you will see a DEG. So, and same with this one, DEG. So you want to make sure that that is stated on your calculator before you start doing these. Otherwise, you're going to do every question and you will get them wrong. Okay, now we want to double check that everything is good here. So what did we originally state? We said that C was 109.8 and B down here, no, not angle B, side B was 82.1. And let's hit calculate and hope. 72.9 for side A, check. Angle A, 41.6, check. And angle B, 48.39, which rounds to 48.4 degrees, and check. So there you go. I don't really need to make any questions for you, because using this website and your brain, you can basically create an infinite number of triangles. I hope this is helpful. Enjoy.